with great power factor comes great yield. Oh yeah, welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Morpheus podcast. I'm your host here, Kyrin, live on the 3rd of March 2025. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where I dismantle the bureaucratic, capitalist, oppressive machine. No, I'm probably not going to be doing that today in this episode, but what I will be talking about is analyzing the capital bucket of the Morpheus project. So this is the 24% of the total tokens that go to this bucket. What is it? How did it originate? Why is it important? Why do we need this? The effects of the 90-day fair launch and the minor changes that will still probably occur to this bucket going towards the future. A little story of the scourge of the Bearwhale, and also how any other project could apply this same process, I guess. So let's jump on to das Kapital, as Marx would perhaps say. And a simple question: why do you need capital for a new project? And it's relatively simple, but if you dive down deep into it long enough, I think you'll get to all sorts of questions like what is money and how does incentives works on people. Actually got a book review of this, The Price of Time, in the Mere Models book reviews channels if you're interested in that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's linked to incentives and what is feasible. What can actually people do, and how are they going to live in the real world while perhaps following this passion, their pursuit of what they're actually trying to do. So it's reasonable perhaps for a couple of people to contribute to an open source project in their free time. If it's something they're passionate about, if they're even lucky, perhaps they have retired, have independent sources of income and can perhaps do it full time. But even then, you're going to at some point need money, resources to scale things, to incentivize more people to work on it, to have a system where people can contribute and live in the real world, if you want this sort of thing, to gain the real traction and movement. So there's many ways that you can perhaps do this. Now, in the standard traditional world of companies, there'd be seed raising rounds by venture capital. You can have perhaps a ready-made project out of the box that you've already worked on, and so therefore have some initial income already coming in, so tied to like a physical business perhaps. You could have a company taking the financial hit of contributing to open source like Meta is doing at the moment with its Llama. You could start a DAO. You could use the V4V model like Podcasting 2.0 is. But a lot of them involve, I guess, the administration stuff and are ripe for internal politicking. So, for example, with DAOs and their tokens, a lot of them either become pay to play or dying on the vine of like 1,000 cuts by voting on every single issue and things like this, or the gradual influence on pressure of money on a system. So, for example, Ethereum almost became a for-profit corporation, and instead of going down the foundation route, or maybe they would have had a foundation and also been for profit. I'm not too sure of the specific details, but you could see how they almost went down that route due to pressures from within their own community. OpenAI, for example, used to be open source, and then when the gradual influences and pressures of money in that system paid its toll, then they went closed source and bowed the knee, took the knee to the government and to all the influences related there. So, okay, well, what the hell can you do? What's a good way of raising capital which will keep people and incentives aligned so that you don't have miscellaneous and I guess splitting up, branching, wasting of time on politicking, or of going closed source and abandoning, I guess, the ethos of what you started with? Well, we have the Techno capital machine, and there's a whole section of this in the GitHub of Morpheus. I'd love to know Marx's thought of the Techno capital machine. God, that would be funny. But in any case, I want to read off this little section here, which will give you an idea of this. So today, there is no easy way for developers who create software to get rewarded for their work without going through an antiquated process. They have to form a company, a foundation, or a DAO to handle sales, computation, storage, overhead, and collect payments from users. This proposal for a Techno Kapital machine is meant to create a platform for developers to create and deploy their software. It does so in a way so that the TCM, Techno Kapital Machine, that's the acronym, first handles all the infrastructure and payments before rewarding the developer based on the popularity of the program. Cool. Okay. Well, that's a rather generic description, but also gets highlights to the problem and what the solution is. So give me the TCM TLDR. Okay. Your wish is my command. And so we've got this little checklist here. Also taken from that same section, which gives a brief overview of how this works. So you'll have a developer deploy a native token to power their project. Users staking staked ETH can choose to allocate their yield to this project. In exchange for allocating the staked ETH that generates yield to help fund a project, users are rewarded with a proportional stream of the project's native token, aka your yield, which is coming from your staked ETH, is now going to a new section here of the staked ETH is kind of being used to buy the token itself. 50% of the yield allocated to a project is used to purchase that project's native token. If you look on your screen here, I've got a little demonstration of, you got your staked ETH, the 3% yield coming from that. Let's just say that's 100 ETH. That gets split up into 50 ETH, which is used for buying more, or in this case for more. And then 50% of that is used to pair with the deposited to a liquidity pool and paired with the token of an automated market maker. Look, I'm going to be upfront and honest with a lot of these things here. When it comes into the deep weeds and technical details of how contracts work, first of all, how they're coded and created, no idea. I tried Python once and was abysmal at it. But I kind of understood this, the pairing, creating a liquidity pool. That makes sense to me. When it's a new original project, I didn't understand the step number 3, which was the used to purchase that project's native token. Because where is that purchase coming from if a market doesn't already exist for that? So if you do know that, please reply down in the comments below and inform us. I got to this step where it was step 1, deposit staked ETH. Step 2, wait. Step 3, question mark. Step 4, profit. So obviously I don't understand all of this, but what I do understand is how the effects of things works, and I can see that and verify that for myself. So the important thing is that it's pro rata based on your contribution. So if you're a small minnow, you've only got 0.1 staked ETH or less, you can still contribute the way that a whale can, but obviously the proportions of what you get is going to be based on the proportions that you provide. So my initial testing out of this, because I was part of the actual Morpheus fair launch, was that what other people were saying of how much they staked and how much they got was also related to the same proportion of what I staked and what I got. So this is one of those ones where it's I don't understand the deep contracts and nuances of how the contracts work, but this, I did enough research to see that, okay, I was getting roughly what other people were getting, and I'm sure there were a lot of eyes on this contract and people looking at it, hence it being open source, to make sure that everything was above board and that there is not any shenanigans going on the side of a pre-mine or VC sales beforehand or tokens being set aside for XYZ. No, this was done in a fair launch manner, and where with these smart contracts, anyone can go check it out and do these sorts of things. So I've got a little question here actually of Juan in the chat, and he's saying, how does integrating staked ETH into MOR balance the risk of liquidation or other marketing volatility plays or smart contract security risks? So this is one of those sections where it's obviously there's always smart contract security risks, and there's always a risk in that. The longer it's been around, the more it's been battle tested, is the way to go, and obviously having security audits and things like that help that a lot. And I believe this one did before it was launched. Who paid for that? How that came about? Once again, I'm not too sure. I don't have all of these details. And also the risk of liquidation, other marketing volatility plays. We will be getting on to that in these next sections here. So there is a question, I guess, of, okay, why use the yield from staked ETH and not just use the staked ETH itself, or just ETH or any other capital? And the answer to that, I think there is a psychological nuance related to, you've got your staked ETH, your money, but then there's also this yield, which is like money to come. It's not already with you. And there is big psychological differences of how things are related to time, how time is related to money. Check out the book review again, which changes these dynamics. I will be going over that in the future episode on fair launches. So let's bootstrap in. Let's see what actually happened with the Morpheus fair launch in this capital bucket. So commenced on February 8th of 2024. So we're more than a year later now. And this occurred for 90 days until May 8th of 2024. On the 91st day, so May 9th, was when tokens were claimable and therefore aka sellable. So this bucket was the first of the four that could be accessed, this being capital, code, compute, and community contributions, builders. And so most of the work was done of this, and those other buckets were locked until a later date when it's the bootstrapping period. You gotta get things rolling first before you can have a fully functioning system. So another little fun Easter egg, if we try to include these here on this channel, was that February 8th was the 28th anniversary of the Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace. Now, with these Easter eggs, like I mentioned in the last episode, I think a lot of them could just come down to luck. There's only fucking 365 days in a year, so there's got to be all sorts of Easter eggs for everything. And, it's not necessarily that this was done intentionally, but we like to have fun here, so let's just say that it was. Some extra details on these. So the minimum amount of staked ETH to deposit was 0.01. This is still the case a year later. There is a 7-day lockup period, which is when you deposit your staked ETH, you could only unlock that 7 days later, and then it's you can claim that again, or it's locked in the contract for 7 days, and then you can get it back. So there's only a 7-day period where your funds, I guess, are inaccessible. And this was done to stop people from doing quick yield farming, as the rewards have to be calculated once per day, and it rewards in advance on that day. So there are ways of gaming that, and people who are out for quick bucks are always looking for opportunities like that. Now, initially, you could claim your rewards from your staked ETH, aka the MOR tokens, once every 12 seconds, essentially. Once as the Ethereum blockchain progresses, you could claim these tiny minuscule amounts. Why would anyone do this? Because you'd be paying gas fees, even though they're relatively small on the Arbitrum network. This is where it was launched. I'm not sure, but nevertheless. Now, the staked ETH deposit contract is managed by 407 multisig. I believe that's now 5 of 9 from community members who were participating in writing up the smart contracts and this whole process. As far as I can tell, they don't actually have that much power over that. It's kind of autonomous, that contract, and I believe there's plans to make it immutable, like lock the contract so no one could do anything with it in the future in terms of how the MOR tokens are distributed from the capital bucket. So enough of that. Give me the stats on how much was staked over this period. What were some of the effects? Well, as you can see on the chart that I've got here, which is of the first 11 days, there was this big ramp up period where it went from 0 staked ETH in the very first day until 11 days later, it got up to about 80,000. And then if you look at the other little inset chart there, this just continued to rise until it peaked the most concrete amount I saw on the Discord was 142k staked ETH on the 5th of May, which was at that time was 4,700 Australian dollars per ETH. Yes, we're using Aussie dollars here, none of this US crap. So quick maths, that equaled about 600 million. There isn't, in this other chart, I believe it actually got over to 150,000 staked ETH at one point in the Kapital bucket, which was just after the unlocking period. So that would have been like May 19th, 20th, late May. And then it's kind of reduced down a lot since then. So not too shabby. That's a whole shit ton of money that people were contributing. And so of that 600 million, it was the yield of that, which was going to, start the process of creating a market, and therefore once a market is contributed, once the MOR token has a price, then the other buckets, the code, community, and compute, they are then incentivized, because the more they can get, then they can actually use that to pay for the services, the real life living and stuff, while they're working on their computer and creating things. So not too bad. Let's jump on to the after effect. What happened after the 90 days? And I guess the most notable thing was the price went down a lot. Down. And this, I feel like, just happens for every token and thing that's released. Doesn't matter if it's fair launch or not. It just has perhaps a peak up or a down. Look, I don't know. I don't know about financial markets. I certainly don't do day trading, technical analysis, things like that. So after it got to, I think this was 192 Australian dollars, it's quickly dropped down to that like 30 to 40-ish, 20 to 40 zone, and it's just been crabbing along there for a while, for the rough year since afterwards. I guess what's important to note is that, much like BTC, MOR has is still being released every day, much as BTC is being mined every day, and so albeit this is less because the amount of MOR per day drops, as we will see in the tokenomics section. Every day it drops by a little amount, and this is disinflationary, not deflationary. A lot of people get that wrong. If it's deflationary, it means that tokens are being taken away from the total supply, whereas disinflationary just means MOR is being released, but it's a lesser amount each day. Hence how Bitcoin works with its 4 years halvings. So what you see is that even though the price stays at about the same amount, the actual total market cap can jump up and down, and will probably steadily go up over time as well. As of the recording of this podcast, there's now 39,000 staked ETH in the Kapital pool, and 1.3 million more has been allocated to there since the time period of it being released. So obviously not all of that has been claimed, and now, contrary to delusional fantasies, up only is not possible. So I think it's likely that most projects will experience something like this. And Morpheus itself had its fair share of short-term yield farmers who were, they already had staked ETH or had ETH, and were like, how can I make more money from this? Which, fair enough, people like to do that. That's what humans do, and how they go about doing that, as long as they're not harming people, I think is, or stealing from them. The kind of fundamental concepts of life, liberty, and property. That's fine. But also, if you're creating a system, I guess you want to have the balance of like, what type of people are you attracting to your project? What are you incentivizing within that? And this is where you'll see a lot of meme coins do the farming, the burning of tokens, the playing around to create metrics that look good and things like this. And what was being noticed with the Morpheus was, particularly in the, I guess, like Q4 of 2024, was there was, I don't know exactly how it works. There was something to do with like, if the MOR price was going down, there was a way to yield farm, which created this kind of negative feedback loop, and that the person who was doing this could create, claim more, dump it, and in that dumping be able to claim more. It was one of those ones that was just creating a negative feedback loop. So this was it's now not as infamous as the BTC Bearwhale, who was a person who was just a whale who was dumping super hard. But Morpheus had a person who had like thousands of staked ETH and was doing a very similar thing of just dumping. And the funny thing is that they actually sold all of their Morpheus just before the Venice snapshot on the on the last day of 2024. And if they'd just held for an extra like 2 weeks, they would have got like a huge airdrop. So rest in peace, Mr. Bearwhale. But how did this come about? Like what can you do to stop value extractors taking from your project and capitalizing on negative feedback loops? Because they're just playing by the rules, right? And I'm going to be channeling my He-Man vibes here. What's going on? By the power of staking, I have the power factor. I wish I had a sword with me. So whilst calling upon the power of Grayskull is usually my go-to option in terms of solving problems, there was another way. And this was with a few alterations in the, I guess you'd call them the capital bucket of the incentives there. There was just an easy way to stop this. And so to incentivize long-term holding, and once again, you got to be careful here because you don't want to just have like these ridiculous lockups and say, oh, this is, look at these tokens. They're locked for 1 million years. Isn't this good for price or something like that? You got to find this balance between having incentives that will work over the long term whilst also not creating a Ponzi-nomic system. It's a fair touch balance. Like I think there's a way of doing it, but lordy, do you have to be very careful with it. So how this happened with the Morpheus was there's been a system for a while which is called Morpheus Request for Comment. So TCM, the Techno Kapital machine, is actually Morpheus Request for Comment number 6, if you wanted to check that out. And this system is designed so that transparent, fair, and efficient suggestions can be implemented. 3 of these were proposed and adopted, namely being MRC 39, which is staking more for capital providers, MRC 45, the Morpheus staked ETH referral system, and MRC 46, the 90-day delay on more claims for capital contributors. I'll skip the middle one just for the moment because that has more relevance actually in the value for value section that I'll do at the end. So the other 2, what were they? So the power factor is essentially a way of staking your claimable more rewards and then getting a multiplication effect on that. So if you've got your staked ETH, the yield on that is earning more, and you can, like I mentioned at the start, you could claim that every 12 seconds if you wanted. But what's a way to stop people from claiming every 12 seconds? Well, there's a way to incentivize people for long terming, which is if you just leave it in there, you can get a power factor and it'll multiply. So there's this little curve here you can see on your screen. Went up to a maximum of 6 years where you'd get a 10.7 multiplication effect. I tried this out with mine, so you can see it there. I've locked it until the 20th of the 9th, 2028, and I've got a power factor of 7.13582, blah, 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 blah. So that was one way of doing it. And then also just the claiming of once per 90 days was also implemented after the first staked ETH deposit or since the last claim. And once again, this was just voted on by the community. Anyone could have their say if they wanted to do it in, have it in 5-day increments, in 30 days, in whatever. That was certainly available, and it was, once again, we'll get into atomic governance at another episode. But this didn't actually have that much effect only on people who were doing these kind of really short-term yield farming strategies. Affected less than 10% of the capital contributors. Anyone who could, once again, have their voice at any point and their say. Okay, shut up and take my staked ETH okay, let's do it. If you wanted to contribute in this way, how can you? So I'll list a couple of helpful websites here, the most important being more.org. If you go to the dashboard there, that's the interface where you can, put it in, connect your wallet with your staked ETH in there, and say, like, I'm going to stake for this long, and also I want to have a power factor, how long do you want to stake it all for, etc., etc. Once again, the staked ETH, your capital can be removed at any time. Doesn't other than the 7-day lockup period, but it is never at risk, and it's been a year now for the smart contracts risks, and nothing has been taken, so that's pretty good. Morelord.com is great for general stats and info, as well as stuff on your account in particular. There's morestats.info. It's kind of variation of Morelord, but in green, so that's kind of cool. And June.com. If you type in Morpheus there, you can find some historical info. That's where I got the chart showing the staked ETH over time. I guess the important thing to remember with all of this is that it's dynamic and liable to change. So, historically, up until this point, staked ETH was the only way to contribute capital to your project via the yield. But there are suggestions of doing this with like USDC, Sol, USDT, all of which I have a staking and a yield from them. But I think even BTC was mentioned. I'm not sure how that would work. And the dynamics in place could change slightly, but the principle is the same, which is if you want to contribute capital to a project, you can do so, and that this capital is kind of the bootstrapping to find a market value for a token, and if there's other buckets being contributed or that people can access it for providing services like compute, like code, like an agent or community builders and things like that. It's a way of just bootstrapping a project off of the ground. So kind of same with these websites. The capital bucket, don't take my words here as law. My aim with these episodes is to provide, I guess, the historical context of what I see going on with this project, and then if there is opportunities to say like, hey, there's the latest developments and things like that, I will do so at the same time. But yeah, I'm more interested in covering the Bearwhale and the how things went at the start, rather than at this moment going over the latest up-to-date things. Once again, if you're looking for like an ossified store of value, go to BTC. But if you want to, if you have an idea for a project and you want to make that happen, you're probably going to need a way of doing that. And like I said, the foundations, the DAOs, the companies, all those sorts of things, they might suit your particular project, your need, but there's no guarantee, and there are other ways of doing that, which gets us onto this section here. Y'all got any more of them TCM? Why, yes, we do. So it's called the MOR 20 token standard. It went so well that kind of seemed like a shame that the smart contracts would be utilized just for this one project. So it was like, well, what's a way of like contributing this back so that anyone could do this? And so all these smart contracts and the dashboards and things to set up, they've already been created. I think it's one of those ones where you just have to plug and play a couple of different variables and you'd be able to do this. Apparently to utilize these, there's a 0.35% of the staked ETH rewards, aka 35 basis points, so that if you use this stuff for a new project, 0.35% of the staked yield from that would go into the Morpheus as like a thank you, I guess, for doing that. I don't know how that works. I don't know how, because it's open source, so couldn't you just copy all those things anyway? So that, I don't know in terms of that. And that kind of feels like it's made up on the spot where that 0.35 number come from. But the whole thing, I guess, is customizable as well, because for the Morpheus project, the 24% of the total MOR tokens are going towards capital. but this could be more or less depending on yours. So as far as I know, there's only been one project to actually utilize this fair launch mechanism so far, and that was Nounspace. They're a Farcaster client, so therefore like an ETH social media platform, kind of modeled on MySpace in terms of feel, and they released their space token this way. I believe they're also a Morpheus builder, and if you wanted to stake your MOR to them, you could do that, but getting ahead of myself, that'll be in the community and build a bucket in the future. So I guess it's been proven that this sort of fair launch mechanism can work, and then it's been proven again by another place doing it, another team, another project doing that. So yeah, pretty cool. I think that's as far as I've seen, it's worked reasonably well. I haven't seen any evidence of pre-mine shenanigans, of people pulling the rug over, of secret tokens being distributed and hidden in secret wallets. Once again, I can't read smart contracts, so I can't verify that for myself, but it's one of those ones where, because it's open source and out there, the more eyes that get on it, the more likely it is that someone will see that in the future. And when you've got 600 million of Ethereum being staked to that, and therefore a fair chunk of actual rewards yield going into this, the likelihood that someone actually has looked at it is very good. Much like the more Bitcoin rises in price, the more incentives there are for people to triple check that the code is working as intended. So, honey, I saved open source. This is just a little final section, which is like, it's funny. When I look at Bitcoin sometimes, I think one of the greatest innovations of it is how it will actually affect the energy grids of the world. Being able to stabilize grids, of being able to handle peak loads, or being able to smooth out peak loads and the base demand, so that there's always a base demand, and then the extra stuff which are a bit more temperamental, such as renewables, of being able to balance the grid so that makes sense. That could be like one of the greatest innovations of Bitcoin. That's one of the ways it could have the biggest impact on the world. And I wouldn't be surprised if this sort of similar thing happens with Morpheus. Like maybe it's the fair launch mechanism, which is one of the actual greatest innovations that it's created, and that's all the AI and ushering in a better world and a more fair world for people to access AI and agents is just a nice side effect and benefit of that as well. It could be, and Bitcoin as well. And these things change over time, in the white paper Bitcoins, peer-to-peer electronic cash. It certainly doesn't behave like cash at this stage, but maybe in the very, very far future, it actually will be, once its store of value and it's kind of reached that upper limits of where it is a bit more stable, it can be utilized in that way. So I want to give a little shout out here as well to OX1984 on the Discord, because they had a little post here which I saw, and I thought this sums it up quite nicely. And so he says, it's not that complicated. Staked ETH deposits gave up 3% yield for MOR. That 3% yield went out to pay coders and app devs via MOR. 3% yield went into LP as liquidity, and the amount of MOR sale mostly came from the desire of users holding onto it. If the projects are funded efficiently and promising, then there is buying pressure of MOR. If projects are shit, then staked ETH will be withdrawn and MOR collapses. It's just a decentralized funding of AI on chain. Compared to typical VC cash injections, it's the future of VC funding. That kind of summarizes my thoughts as well. I think it's a really interesting way of getting a project up off the ground, of making it fair so that anyone who wants to contribute, and not all of us are blessed to have spare capital in the world, but being able to contribute in other ways is vitally important, with compute, with code, with your brain, your resources, your time, with your community, participating in the community, aka building. But you do need to have that capital there to incentivize that and bootstrapping that off the ground. And I think this is an amazing way of doing it, and I think it's worked pretty well. Obviously, we'll see in the future. And there's always going to be people griping and complaining about this happened or that happened or XYZ. But in terms of all the kind of things that I've seen, this seems to be the most fair and make the most sense to me. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining in. In this final value for value section, this is just my little pitch to you. I provide all of this detail, these infos, the energy I've worked on this all up front. Fantastic diagrams and memes. I hope you enjoy these. I spent a bit of time creating them. They are good fun, so I enjoy it as well. And I provide all of this upfront to you without any stipulations, any there's no sponsorships, no ads, no VC funding, no DAOs behind this podcast, and there never will be. But I just ask that you return that value in some shape or form. Now, you can do this in time, talent, or treasure. Time, like I said, leaving a comment, correcting me on anything that I got wrong, being able to, any of those areas where I was unsure, reaching out to me or writing that down in the video comments or audio, I guess, if you've on a podcast platform, would be very, very much appreciated. Talent, letting me know how I could improve the podcast, what you would like to see. If you want to help contribute to working on the podcast as well, would be very much appreciated. And I haven't mentioned this before, but treasure. And so the way that I've done this in my other podcasts is via either PayPal or something called Boostergrams, which is being able to send Bitcoin via the Lightning Network. And you can do this with a message attached and do it directly within your podcasting app. Because I'm doing this on YouTube and it's a little bit more broad, and because this is a rather specific project and podcast, there is another way. And this was, like I mentioned, what MRC was it? It was MRC number 45, the Morpheus staked ETH referral system. And so if you check out the show notes, I've actually got a Ethereum address there. This is just one I've whipped up. A new one. I'll probably use it as like a testing wallet, to be honest, of just playing around with some things. So if you put that in before you actually stake your ETH and on the MOR dashboard, you can actually do that. This will, I believe, give me a 3 to 5% bonus and yourself a 1% bonus. I'm not exactly sure, once again, how it works. I've yet to test this out for myself. You could just straight up send me some more to that address, and it'd be very much appreciated in terms of treasure, in terms of helping me pay the bills and keep the lights on and maintain the energy and motivation to do all of these things. Knowing one of the worst things about podcasting and I guess media content creation is when you feel like you're talking into the void, when it feels like no one's there. And so contributing back in some sort of shape, form or manner is very, very much appreciated and important, because without your contributions, this podcast will certainly go away. Because obviously people wouldn't value it, and why would I work on something that's not valuable to people? So this model definitely works better if there's a message attached, hence why I like the Boostergrams. But if you use that, it'd be very, very much appreciated. And let me know you've done it as well. Let me know that you've got some value from this, and if there's ways that I can provide more value to you, please let me know. So I think we'll end it there for today. Thank you so much for joining in. I am live here 11 a.m. on Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So joining in for the live is super fun as well. But we will leave it there, and I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Kyrin out. Bye.